Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is another episode of Candid Conversations brought to you by one institution in the Own Vision Academy. I'm your host, Jason Warner, and we have a live one tonight. So, Tuesday was election day, and everyone voted. Some candidate won, some candidates didn't win. However, this conversation is about you voting. Now what? And I brought two just I veer as amazing brothers that don't just talk about it. They are really intent on getting things done. First, we have Jacee Sebastian. I would say a community advocate, a political advocate. He's run some campaigns. He's done a little bit of everything. And then my brother Kevin Grimes, my go-to, I call him the money man. He's not only a person that we talk a lot about issues facing the community, but he's one of those people that says, you know what? If I'm going to complain about it, I must do something about it. So introducing first my brother Jacee Sebastian. Tell the folks a little bit about you, Jacee.
Oh man, I just consider myself a humble servant, a father, a husband, um, a Christian brother who just want to see the best for his community. And in so doing, I just find myself in a lot of positions that just allow me to help influence some things. Or even if I don't find it there and there's a problem, I figure out how to help solve it for the community. So, as you said, a little bit of a lot of things. I've been fortunate over the years to just live in a community, and I've met some great people. You gentlemen, of course, included in that conversation, but also a lot of our elected officials. It's great when you can reach out and get your telephone call to be answered when there's a problem to solve something in the community. So I'm just here, always here to serve, and always try to make things better. For everybody.
And my brother Kevin Grimes, he doesn't like to be called the advocate or activist. He says he's just Ethan's father. So Ethan's father, give us a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, man. So Kevin Grimes, and yeah, man. I think your intro was spot on. I've always been that person that if you keep saying something ought to change or somebody ought to do something, if you're the one feeling that way, then you're probably the person that needs to be doing it because clearly you have the passion. So my thing is, man, the reason I don't like to be called a advocate or activist or anything like that is because I'm just a public servant. And if something moves me to do something, I'll be there. And if it's something that doesn't move me, I won't. So I think when you say if an activist, whether they want to or not, they're going to do it, right? If it's in line with their thing. But my thing is just the community, my family, my friends, my neighbors. Once you start impacting them adversely, that's when things start to bother me. And that's when that somebody oughta starts to happen. So yep, Kevin Grimes, father, husband, business owner, and proud resident of the city of South Fulton and a supporter of the South Fulton public school system.
Awesome. That part is critical, right? So I call on both of you guys a lot when there's things that are impacting the community because if for folks that don't know that are watching this on the West Coast or across the globe, right? These two brothers had a major hand in creating the city of South Fulton, right? They saw a problem, and a lot of times people say, why are we creating new cities? Why are we you have a county, we have cities, but you want to create a new city? Is it because you're selfish? What all those different things. But what these two brothers and some amazing people around them and with them said, you know what? We want to have some local control. And if folks don't understand how Fulton County in Atlanta works, most counties, the person that's elected in your area can make legislation for your area or appropriate things for your area. Fulton County does not have local control, right? So you can be in the north making legislation for the south and vice versa. And these, I would say, super smart people said, you know what? that doesn't seem fair. It kind of goes back to the Tea Party and taxation without representation and different things like that. And they said, you know, we can do something about it and gain some local control. So not only they're smart people, but they were able to navigate that process. So I said in a video Tuesday, I said, you know, voting is just the first step. Now what? And this is part of that conversation to now what? You voted, right? And as we engage into this conversation, I want you all to think about the now what, because guess what? A new president is not going to change your community. So, Jacee, talk to me about some of the things that made you get into this process of activism. We've talked about this before, but let the people know, like, what said, you know what? I can't sit around and just let things be the same way.
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier that had a talk with my daughter early this morning, and I said, you know, babe, I could trace all this, everything that I'm doing, you know, being called an activist, I could trace it all to one moment. Just getting up one morning and after having moved into a community that was relatively a young community, and all the street lights were out. And I am like, what is happening outside? You guys have to walk to catch the bus in the darkness. This is unsafe, obviously. I need to find out what is going on. Well, one thing led to the next, and that moment in deciding to do something to solve that problem led me to be the first ever elected HOA president. And once I got exposed to that process and then got exposed to the knowledge that we basically have taxation without representation in where I was living. It didn't matter who was going to follow or who was not going to follow. I committed that point when attending my first meeting to say, this has got to change. And so back to the nights the light went out or the morning the lights didn't, the lights weren't on. It was just one of those things where I felt I was doing this because the neighborhood was unsafe and my children and family and my neighbors, as Kevin said, were being threatened. So rather than just sitting down and saying, hey, somebody ought to do something about this, is that I'm going to do something about it. And that led me into the cityhood movement a couple of years later.
So Kevin, you know, we know, if many people don't know, but Kevin's the money guy, right? He has an amazing company, CFO Leasing. He's basically I wouldn't say a CFO on hire, but you've helped a number of corporations large to handle their money, right? And money is just one part of this equation. But not only did you help with the cityhood, right? You said, I want to help in the education process, which your T-shirt is. You know, talk about some of the things that you help to do to impact education in your community, not just the city government.
All right. So the number one thing. So first of all, thank you, and that's flattering. I don't know that I've done all that, but that's awesome.
Hey,
But
I'm gonna say for myself.
yeah. But the one thing that I would, if I believe that to be true, and someone asked a question like you did, I would say the number one thing that I've personally done to help impact education is not run from the public school. That, to me, that's number one. And I'm not knocking people who are in private schools. I'm not knocking it at all. Don't take it the wrong way. Because you have to do what works best for your child and what works best for your family. And I'll never waver from that. But there are people, if we're going to have a candid conversation, there are people like me who send their kids to private schools solely because they think their kid is getting a better experience. They think private school is better, and they don't realize that if all of the quote unquote educated and all of the successful and all of the elite people move their kids out of public school and go to private school, where are the examples for those private school kids? So in my example, my son can academically go anywhere, and he certainly has the family support to go anywhere. But as a parent, I don't move the needle in that classroom, because that private school, those kids are going to be fine whether we were there or not, because they're there. But the impact that I make in my own son's classroom by virtue of being there every day or twice a week, talking to those kids, hey, pull up your pants. Hey, how are you doing in school? Do you need anything? Hey, here's a book bag. Here's a calculator. The impact that I have in my son's classroom moves the needle. So I could pay 20 grand a year to send my kid to private school, or I could send my kid to public school and put 3,000 or 5,000 a year directly in his classroom and move the needle with all the other 20 kids around him. So the most impactful thing I've done, I would say, is not running, staying there to be the change that I want to see in the public school, and also understanding this: if I love my son and I want my son to be okay, I have to acknowledge that if his friends aren't okay, he's not okay either. So I have to be where his friends are as well. And if they're in public school, I need to be there to help make sure that they're okay as well.
So let's take this back to Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
So we had an election, and we've seen the numbers pour in, and we have a new president-elect and a vice president-elect. And there was a lot of initiative to get people out to vote, to get people to register to vote, right?
Mhm.
But there's a new president-elect. There may be two new senators in Georgia. Across the landscape, there are new judges. There's new mayors. Kevin,
Yeah.
what changes?
Not much right away. And let me explain. I'm not ignorant to politics. I understand that policies can change, appointments are going to change. But let me just give you an example of why I say nothing unless we do something. That's the other half. Nothing unless we do something. Let me give you an example why. To me, this is just my own personal opinion. Turning states blue all by themselves don't do anything for what we're talking about. And let me explain what I mean. In Minneapolis, the mayor is a Democrat. The governor of Minnesota is a Democrat. The senator, Amy Klobuchar, she's a Democrat. For the most part, the police chief is probably a Democrat. That still didn't stop George Floyd from getting his neck kneeled on. So if turning something blue is the answer, how did that happen in Minnesota, which is pretty much blue? So we can't vote our way out of oppression. And I'm gonna just say that one more time. We cannot vote our way out of oppression. So yes, you put the people in place that can write the policies, but you have to advocate for the policies, make sure they deliver the policies. But in your own home, you have to get things right there. Then you have to get things right in your schools and your communities. And then you have to get things right in your local economy. So the goal should be that when money comes into your economy, it touches hands 7 times before it goes out. Let's take an economic goal of at least getting our money to circulate 3 or 4 times before it goes out by 2024. So until you start doing things like that, nothing's going to change. Because the reality is, if you get all of that stuff right, it may not matter who your president is.
That's powerful. So, what we say at One Institution and On the Vision is we can't wait for someone else to fund our freedom, right? We can't wait for someone to drop out of the sky and say, you're saved now. We have to do it for us, right? We have to seed the change we want to see. But from a local politics, right? Even federal politics, Jacee, you work in local government right now. What can
That's correct.
an everyday person do in their community when they see something wrong? What would be the first step? Like, I don't like the fact that there are potholes on the street. What can that person do to make change? Because, we get out and vote, we get hyped up and excited, and I am an advocate of voting, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But what can someone do today, after the election's over, to move the needle in their community?
One of the problems that I think we have in a lot of our communities is that our residents do not, for the most part, know how the system works. right? And so beyond voter education to say this is what happens at election time and this is who you should vote for and so on and so forth. Sometimes we don't even know the functions of the offices that we're electing people to. We just see the people and we see they come and they put up a platform. We may not even know whether what they're saying is implementable or not. And at the end of the day, it's about implementing those policies and those things that you are voting for, at least that you think you're voting for. So from an everyday perspective, every citizen ought to try and understand and learn exactly how things function at all levels of government that in which they live. So from your city council to your county commissioner to your state representative, to your state senator's office, you should know what each of those folks are responsible for. For example, I heard yesterday on a call that during the last storm that we had, a lot of people, they were just bombarding their city council about their lights being out, right? City council do not control the infrastructure of the power, right? Do we even know the usefulness of the Public Service Commission and the work that those people do in terms of infrastructure, right? So again, if we don't learn and if people and organizations don't take the time to try and educate folks, and if we don't take the step to try and learn for ourselves, because truth be told, sometimes we have community meetings and, Kevin knows this because we've been in a few together and we've hosted some together, that we would hold a meeting in a particular area and, where you think the auditorium should be full, you may have 10, 20 people show up, right? And then something happens and then people complain or there's a controversy and everyone gets mad and, then there's a big meeting and, you may try and come up with some answers out of that meeting and then afterwards everybody go back to their corners and no one does anything or bother to follow up. So folks have to learn their local government. When I put an X in place, what is this person going to be responsible for? And how do I contact these people? These days, the internet is a wonderful thing because you can go to the internet and find all of your elected officials and their contact information. So it's quite easy to do that and call these people, let them know who you are and the problems that you're seeing in the community and ask them to do something about it. And quite frankly, the elected officials that I know in our footprint, they want to hear from the community. The problem is they don't hear from the community enough.
That's an interesting point. So for those that don't know, I served as the community relations director for one of the largest local governments in the state of Georgia for a number of years. And one of the things that I would say all the time is it didn't matter the race or the socioeconomic background. Most people react to situations and didn't show up. So you talked about you hosted those community meetings and no one show up. But when there's a problem, everybody's like, how did you let this happen, right? So to your point, we have to, as a community, be more diligent about just taking a look at the agenda items, right? So at least once a month, your city council, your county commission, and your school board is going to meet at least once a month in most jurisdictions around the country. What I would tell you guys to do is go online, look at the agenda. If it's something that seems out of whack or something that you think that, you know what, you need to address, even if you can't make it, tell 3 neighbors about it, right? Maybe one of them can make it, but make your voice known, because part of that is people, when you don't show up, they take that apathy or your lack of voice as you don't care. Kevin, I know you're not one of those people that just don't care. Tell us a little bit about how you help to organize communities around any cause, and what would be a first step for someone to get into that position of trying to organize groups to a cause that you are passionate about.
Yeah, so I'll just give you some low hanging fruit, because right now I think schools are where we should be focusing a lot of our effort, particularly for those of us who understand the school to prison pipeline and know that it's real. I can just tell you about a group that I was a part of, the Creekside Men's Group, where you think that a small community can't make a difference. There's an elementary school that's directly across the school from where we live, and it's a public school, and we had people again sending kids to private school, doing all these wonderful things, and we just sat down and said, look, if 5 of us are sending our kids to public school, that's $100,000 a year that we're taking out of our community. And you take that over 10 years, that's $1 million that just the 5 of us have taken $1 million and we've taken it out of our community in order to avoid the school that's across the street from us. Now that's just one part, because money isn't everything. The other part is you have to do a mirror check. And we said to ourselves, if we're lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs, elected officials, PhDs, business owners, and we're so-called good people, pastors, if we're all of that and the school across the street from us sucks, whether we like it or not, that says something about us. And that's just the God's honest truth. I mean, if the school across the street from where you live sucks, that says something about you. And so when we understood that, now it was just the 5 of us to make a 300, 400 home community and going block by block, having that awareness that, hey, all of us should not have to drive past ours every day. So out of that, so second thing, and one of the most important things I learned, is the idea of the so before we went and trying to
we're losing you a little bit, Kevin.
Yes. Okay.
We're losing you, but I think I can kind of get the gist of it. It seems like you're coming back a bit, but part of it is you have to participate.
Am I back now?
You're back now. And what I was saying is, I think I'm kind of getting the gist of that. You have to participate in the process, right? You have to show up. You have to say, you know what? If it's bad on my watch. If it's bad, we have to do something about it, right? So that means joining that PTA. That means showing up and volunteering in that school. That means if I don't like my city government, showing up to the city government meeting and saying, hey, how can I serve versus how can I complain, right? Because part of it is this is the city that you live in, and we have to shift that. One of the things I want to show for people real quick.
Wait, before we go, there's one part that I want to address.
Give it to
the second part is making changes.
Your Wi-Fi.
These great ideas about what we want to do to move the needle. We sat down with the school and said, we have this demand part that we have. We've got our own ideas. Where do you think the needle can be moved? And so talking with that school, or whatever that entity is you want to change, how to be more efficient and effective with the resources.
Kevin,
Hey, Justin, can I add
Go ahead.
something here until hopefully he comes back? As I was earlier, I said I had an early conversation with my daughter this morning who lives in New York. And part of what I was telling her is my own involvement in school and reflecting on the years when she was in high school and actually becoming like the father of her chorus department class. And it was amazing. And I felt as if I was just doing what I should be doing, meaning taking care of not only her, but helping with the school, being part of the structure, helping with the other kids, trying to help them navigate, things like applying for colleges and so on. And I felt that was just what I should do, but it was almost embarrassing having people around, actually lauding that this was such great stuff, because there were just other parents who were not there, especially the fathers, right? And so I just never looked on it as a burden. I just looked on it as as a duty, what I had to do for my child who I love, and also just to be able to help other kids around. That, to me, that's what we all should be doing, and public school as well, not just private school.
And we're having all types of technical difficulties. Somebody having some cooking some of that good food over there.
Yeah, I think it's one of my boys. They're probably in the kitchen. Yeah.
Part of this is, right, finding something that you're passionate about. Everybody's not going to be passionate about everything, but just taking the time to look at it, right, to kind of understand what is actually going on, that will move our needles just that much more
Yeah.
throughout the process, right? You said that you saw something in your daughter's school and you wanted to engage, right? If it's as simple as, to your point, joining the homeowners association, all of those things will help move the needle. But what the major point of this candid conversation is, you can't just vote. It can't be vote, period.
And walk away.
It's the vote and begin, right? That's
Right.
where we begin the work. And we see so many other communities that are thriving because they continue to do the work. Kevin brought up something about economics, and I hope he can get that Wi-Fi. We're gonna have to tell Ethan to get off the super streaming.
Yeah.
But the economics of it plays into a lot, right? Because nothing in this life is free. There's a reason why there's campaign donations, campaign contributions. You'll see these televisions about getting money from corporate donors and different things like that. People don't donate money just because they like you. They donate money because they want something, or they want to leverage something for their best interest, right? So what would you say to communities, even if they don't feel like they have a whole lot of money, but how can they candidates differently as they move forward, Jacee?
Did you see how they can support candidates as they
Yeah,
move forward?
candidates differently,
Listen.
because I mean, the money talks. However, we
Yeah.
still need to engage them.
One of the things that I was surprised to learn when I got closer to the system, that our state representatives and our state senators and even our city council people, they do this not as a money maker. These are not jobs. These are labors of love for the community, because they want to bring service to the community. I'm not going to say everyone has the same level of commitment, but for the money that these folks make, which is less than $20,000 a year, except in a few cases, right? And having to go to city council meeting, having people call their phones, having to attend all these other community meetings and so on, trying to put legislation and policies in place for their community. These folks need help. And so even if it's to volunteer for at 1 day per year, or a couple of days out of a year, to say, what do you need? Do you need something out here in the community, or do you need something at City Hall, right, that I can come and help with, just to take the burden off? Do you need something in the state legislature? Do I need to come down there and help host an event for you, right? All these little things actually help to add up. And of course, once you're in that process, you also get a better sense of how the system works. And it's also a great way to network, right? So that you can understand, who do I talk to about what? You may not have an issue today, but something may come up in a week, a month, a year, 2 years from now. And you can say, oh, I know exactly how that works. And they'll say, well, Jason, how do you know that? Well, back in 2015, I just happened to be at the state capitol doing X, Y, and Z, and I came across this issue, and I learned how that works, right? And again, all that stuff, all that volunteering help to take pressure off of some of these folks, and you're able to, as I said, do some networking and learn the system. So money isn't all. You know, they say time is money. So if you don't have cash, give your time. It's just as good as money.
Kevin, I think we got you back. You here? You here with us, brother?
I'm here with you, man. You know what? When I start getting in my zone, man, the internet wants to shut me down. It's just one of them things, man.
You must be doing something right. You must be doing something right. So yeah, we'll jump back into and kind of go down that path on you. I know you were talking about before you were starting to have that internet chop about how you engage the school across the street and what can other people when they're saying, you know what, my school may seem like they're failing. My school may seem like it doesn't give the resources that other schools give. What can they, just three simple things that the regular person can do to navigate through that process to help improve their school?
Right. And I'll piggyback on what JC said. I know he talked about the three T's: time, talent, or treasure. Are you doing one of the three? I won't rehash it because I think I came in while he was talking about that. Two, make sure that you meet with the school to understand that the resources you have, the time that you have, and the talent that you have actually identifies and aligns with actual needs they may have. Example I can give is we once wanted to donate water or do something, and they said, "Hey, we have no shortage of that. You know, we don't need supplies. We still have 200 book bags, so we don't need your pencils and paper. What we need you to do is come here and read to a kid." So again, it's making sure you understand that your level of giving actually matches a need. And then the third is the commitment. The commitment, like I'm not, the shirt, you know, means a lot, but it's a choice. You know, you have to choose to do it. You have to commit to it. You have to believe in it, and you have to understand that it takes time to move it. So if a school is a failing school, and your kid's in the first grade, that school is not going to be a top school by the time your kid's in the third grade. Now your kid can be a top performer, right? Certain kids in classrooms may be top performers, but it's going to take some time to move that needle and to change those test scores. So the patience aspect, not intolerance, because you should never tolerate mediocrity and you should never tolerate failure, but having the patience to understand that it's like planting a tree or a garden. You know, you plant it today, you might not reap the benefits of it until this season, or if it's a raspberry or blueberry plant, you might not reap the benefits of what you.
Back on the technical difficulty, but that's so important.
Plant.
You know, we were working, and I want people to know, like, the work, you're not always going to win. Just like this campaign that just happened, there's some folks that are really frustrated, and we're not just talking about the presidency. We're talking about down the ballot that people didn't win. They worked really hard in neighborhoods all across America, and they thought that they were going to be the best candidate for that position, and they didn't win. There's ballot items that people wanted in their community and did not pass, or some that did pass. So I just want you all to know that your process is not always going to bear the fruit that you want. But what you will get from that is people will know that you're part of that squeaky wheel to make the things work. I think Kevin's trying
Absolutely.
to. So, you know, you back in, you switch to the phone for us?
Yeah, man, I gave up. I gave up on it. I don't want to blast my internet provider, but I gave up on them and just went to the phone.
All good. So, you know, when I was just talking about how sometimes you're not going to win, right? You can advocate hard as you want. And, you know, earlier in 2020, I reached out to Jacee. I said, you know, they're trying to pass this. I actually reached out to both of you guys. They're trying to pass a House Bill 444, which was in the state of Georgia, dual enrollment. And we fought hard. We had folks, you know, writing letters to the state house, to the state senate, to the school board to advocate on that behalf. And unfortunately, our efforts to get that bill to fail didn't happen. But one thing I can tell you did happen the people that represent those areas know that there is a force that is watching, right? They know that there are people that are concerned and that will not only call, email, get on the news stations, and rally behind something, they will continue to push forward. I want to show you guys something real quick, everyone who's watching, what that's really important about your participation. And this goes about to your participation in voting. So this screen right here, these numbers were from a 2018 City of Atlanta runoff election, all right, the general election. So when elected officials and people that are running for office, they go through the statement of vote for that last election and they look at the turnout. In this district, they had 73% turnout, 70% turnout, 40% turnout, 36% turnout. They go down and say, all right, these are the people that are really engaged. These 32% turnout, they're really not engaged. And when we talked about that squeaky wheel gets the oil, that's what we're talking about, right? So your process is not just voting, it's about engaging after the vote. Because not only do they look at where you did or did not vote to say, you know what, Jason's community didn't vote. They're part of that 32%. And no, that's not my community, but giving it for example, they didn't vote. They didn't show up. They don't care. We're not going to send any resources to it. Now, Jacee's community, on the other hand, they voted almost 2/3, or excuse me, 3/4 of what was going on in that area. They need the resources. Those are the squeaky wheels. So when you're looking at multiple things, how many people push out and how many people in that area show that they care, right?
Yep.
So voting truly matters, and then the activity after that also matters. Jacee, you said something?
Yeah, I was saying you're absolutely right. I mean, the squeaky wheels, tend to get attention, but the squeaky wheels that vote get even more attention. Okay, and believe you me, just as you did in pulling those numbers, they're real numbers. They're publicly available numbers. Anyone can pull that data and look at it, and people do look at it, right? And they would, decide whether your area is worth, the attention that you need or not. So one of the first things, you need to do from the ground level is encourage all of your neighbors not to register to vote. And once they register, include them to vote. And not only are you including them to vote every now and then, no, you need to vote in every election. So if your community becomes what is known as a super voter community, now you have people's attention, because they're like, they not only vote, they vote every time on everything. So we need to listen to those folks.
So Kevin, one, I think when you start dropping these super jewels, the internet tries to fight you, but we want to keep getting those jewels out, right? You've helped start a number of organizations, from the city, education, South Fulton Parents for Education. What is it that you think helps to engage people to see through, right? Because a lot of times we get into a space of nothing's going to change, nothing's going to change. What can help groups that are trying to push their communities over the top to say something actually could change? What are some of the tools that help those folks in that process?
Right. One is they call it goal congruence. That was what they called it when we were in school. That was getting everyone in the group to at least agree to these are the things we're trying to accomplish. Now, there might be 1,000 ways to get there, but are we all trying to get to the same point? That's number one. Number two is you really have to make sure that people understand and can see how their contribution matters. So this election is a perfect example. There's someone near and dear to me, an 18-year-old, and I talked to him about the importance of registering to vote. So much so that I sat down with them while they registered to vote. But they didn't vote. They did not vote this last election. But I said to him, I said, how many kids were in your high school? And, he said, at the time, he said maybe 2,000 or 3,000. And at the time, I think Biden was only up in Georgia by about 2,000 votes. And I said, just understand that Biden won Georgia pretty much by the size of one high school. So now he understands that, does one vote really matter? Mathematically, statistically, I don't know any major election that was won by one vote. But he now understands that if there's 5,000 people or 10,000 people thinking that their one vote doesn't matter, that collective thought process, is what dooms you. So the same thing applies locally. If you're trying to get something done and somebody believes that my one letter won't matter, you're probably right. But if 500 people are all writing one letter, that's when it matters. So like I heard Jacee say once, sometimes you have to teach people and educate them on what these offices actually do, what these elected officials' roles and responsibilities are. You also have to go back down to the individual voter, the individual neighbor, the individual community member, and actually show them that they matter and and the significance of their contribution, because they may view their contribution as nominal or minimal or marginal, but they're one brick in a whole pyramid, and they have to understand that.
It's interesting you said that, right? So we talked about how that we did not succeed in the House Bill 444 campaign,
right?
But some of those things will work later on, right? So when Old County Schools was talking about coming in fully virtual, not virtual, didn't know what was going on from a COVID standpoint, I can remember just from emails from parents like us coming in the day that the meeting, and they already had an agenda, they had their plan forward, and so many of us sent emails to the superintendent's office and to the school board members that in the middle of that meeting, their whole plan changed and said, you know what, we're going to pause because there are people engaged in the process, right? So this is why we talk about you voted, now what? The what is the work. The what is engaging and listening while the process is going on and not just responding to things that happen. So that's why it's so important that we just Google whatever your city is, your county, your state, look at the agenda. It's just a piece of paper. You'll find out how often they come out. Look at those agendas to see, just go down the line and see what's going on. And to your other point, Kevin, we focus a lot on this presidential election, but there are local elections that do more impact than the presidential election will ever do for local communities. So Jacee, talk about how those local elections are so important and how people have to come out when there are runoffs. We have a runoff, not in our area, but in District 5 for John Lewis's seat. I think it's a little weird, but then we'll that's actually starting. The early voting starts from tomorrow for that, and then January 5th we have 2 Senate runoffs that's going on. So talk about how getting out for not just these big national elections, but these local elections means so much to communities.
Oh, absolutely. I know. By the way, there's a city council race in Chattahoochee Hills that was decided by one vote, and then there's another in College Park a couple years ago that was decided by 2 votes. So every vote does matter, right? That's number one. In terms of the local election, you really have to go back to the point of saying again, as you said, looking at these agenda, finding out what these people are doing and what the decision that they make that affects you, right? And get involved in those decision making. Whether you vote or not, the decision is being made, and the decision is being made by somebody else, right? So you might as well take the time to go out and cast that vote. I mean, we have so many options these days to vote. for instance, early voting here in Fulton County this past time was expanded to, I think, 3 weeks and 30 early voting sites, for in-person voting, right? And then
Right.
we also had the mail-in ballots. Okay. We also had these buses that were moving from area to area within the county, again making voting accessible to the voters. So we have very little excuse now not to get involved in elections at all levels, right? Federal downwards. And oh, by the way, where I live, 52 cents out of every dollar goes to the school board. Okay. So, and then that's one of the things that people pay very little attention to, the school board elections. So if every dollar you pay in taxes is going towards the school board, why would you not get involved? It's more than half of your taxes. Why would you not get involved? And then why would you give half of your tax dollar, a little more than half, and then pay for your kid to go private school because the policies are not put in place to make your schools across the street better, right? Because you are not involved in the local schools to get it changed, right?
And that's so important, right? So I want to talk about a couple of things that people may not know. That's a local level. It's not your president, it's not your senator, it's not your congressperson, right? Your roads being paved, the type of businesses that come into your community, that's a local thing, right? So if someone's approving the plans of the zoning that's local. That's either your city zoning or your county zoning. So if you're saying, oh, we don't have these right stores or the type of shopping that we want in our community, that's the development authority for your city or your county. It's not the president of the United States. It's not your congressperson or your U.S. senator. That's your local elected officials that are there on the ground that are making these decisions. If you're saying, you know what, we don't have enough police officers in our community, guess what? That's right there in the mayor's office or your county commission for the funding for that. If we're saying that when there was this big piece, and I think words matter when they talk about defund the police, I think it should be reappropriate money to get the services that we need, right? Your health department is funded by your county tax dollars, right? And they could say, hey, we're going to give some funding to the police department so we can have counselors and social workers to participate in that process. But if you don't vote local or participate local, and that participate is critical, you will never have those services that you want. And you're complaining about who the president is to get that. They don't think about your local community. Think about, what is it, 159 counties in Georgia alone?
159
Right.
counties. And
Yeah.
imagine this, Jason. For most families, the largest investment most families have is their home, right?
Absolutely.
But yet, the decisions that are made by your local government is what affects your home the most, right? If you have your home here and it's worth a certain amount of money, and then they rezone a piece of land across the street, and all of a sudden there's a warehouse going there, right? All of a sudden you can't sell your house for that money anymore. It might be years and years of money and equity that you might have inside that home. It just gets flushed down the toilet. So why would you not want to know what is going on in your local area to be able to influence and to tell your local government, no, we don't need that here, right? And if you don't look at that agenda, if you don't go out to the zoning meetings, you have no idea that these things are happening. And oh, by the way, by the time the heavy machineries move in and start to clear the land, and you find out, oh, what's going across the street there? Oh, I don't need that here, brother. It's too late. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's already
It's a
been
lost
done.
cause at that point.
So, Kevin, one of the things I know you're an advocate of people having their right to build what they want. If they buy the land, they get it rezoned, different things like that. We've talked about that. You guys have some new neighbors to your community, and I asked about what your feeling is on that. But I think some people feel like all of this is overwhelming. They have jobs, they have children, they have lives, and it's like, man, this is something else that I have to add on my plate. We elected these people. Why can't they just do what's good for them? What's something small, right? That just the everyday person can do if they just don't feel like they have any more capacity to, be on a community council or show up every time. What's something small that they can do?
So if you have, so I'll move past schools. I'm beating schools to death. Because if you have kids, man, showing up, because you best believe if your kid gets in trouble, you make the time to show up. A lot of these parents say they don't have time for X, Y, and Z, but they don't miss the court appearances. When the kid's in trouble. So so I digress. On the community side, being visible really doesn't cost you anything. So no matter what shift you work, first, second, third shift, there's something that's going on where you being present matters. Start with voting, right? So there's no reason not to vote. That's a small thing. Vote. Just being like, so I say a lot of things about people, and I get a lot of criticisms about my positions on voting. But over the past 10 years, no one can show me a voting record that's better than mine because I'm there every time, even the small ones. Voting is one. Taking the time to go to a town hall meeting about any particular topic, and you don't have to participate, you don't have to ask a question, you don't have to be a panelist. Just being in the room listening. As JC mentioned, we've had events where we were at auditoriums and you thought the whole auditorium should be full. If that person shows up and they're one of 7 people, you're gonna stand out. It gives you an opportunity to meet people and ask questions. So just being present, being visible, particularly as men, right? Having these kids see us walk in the halls in schools, having the kids see us in the morning when we drop our kid off and give our kid a kiss on the cheek or a hug, the expressions of love. Just being visible at the even if it's only during the times that are convenient for you, that starts for the person who is experiencing a high level of apathy, or someone who says, "Hey, I don't have the time." Just being present and being visible starts the process.
We've had some technical difficulties, but we've touched on a lot of stuff, right? We touched on the folks actually looking at those numbers of who votes. We touched on it's not just federal, it's local. We touched on the school system. We touched on the fact that over half of each dollar that you spend in taxes goes to the school system. So why wouldn't you be a part of that? And why wouldn't you engage in the process? You know, I guess we're coming up on that hour. So JC, give us your last closing moments of what you think people can do and should do to move the needle after we just went through this election, right? Because my prayer and part of this candid conversation is I don't want people to think because you voted, life is going to change. I don't
Right.
want people to think that, that we have a different person in the White House. We have a different person as a VP that many people that, especially that are probably listening to this candid conversation, can relate to just in skin tone, right? That things are going to change. So JC, what would you tell people if they that gem, that JC gem, that they can take away from this?
If before now you didn't pay a lot of attention to politics, then most people have paid attention this time around. You don't have 74 million on one side and 70 million on the other side without people paying attention, right? But if you never paid attention before, let 2020 be the time that you turn over a new leaf and say,
Do we lose you now, JC?
Yeah, it was a glitch.
Man, we got a glitch. We got a glitch, man. All right. Hopefully, we can get JC back. He's frozen. But Kevin, you said something that was important, and I think people really missed in the beginning in your opening, right? Money in our communities circle around half a day, if that, a few minutes.
Right, right,
Goal is to get it to circle around 6 to 7 times. If we
right.
can get to 2024 to get it to circle around 3 times, you know, as we close out, talk about the economics and what does that really mean? Does that mean just supporting people that look like you? Does that mean shopping in your neighborhood? Does that mean what does that really mean? Because we hear, and I call him Uncle DCA, Dr. Claude Anderson. He talks about it in Powernomics. His, his 5-story building, and but what does that circling the money really look like for success in our communities after we voted?
All right. And let me paint the picture, man. And I hope people don't just they don't listen to the first part I say and get turned off and don't listen to the whole thing. We have to really understand what it means to grow your economy, your local economy, what growth looks like. And I'll give you an example. So like right now, I am thoroughly happy and pleased that we just opened a new Publix in our area. And I should just say a grocery store. But we opened a grocery store in our area, which is great. But if you have 100,000 people going to one grocery store, and then now you get a new grocery store and you split it, and 50,000 people go to one grocery store and 50,000 people go to another grocery store, is that really growth, right? If 100 people goes to one hamburger shop and you open another hamburger shop and now it's 50-50, is that really growth? The growth comes from getting new people from other areas to come in and spend your money. So with businesses, trying to find ways to get money outside of our city to come into our city, outside of our state to come into our state. That's how you start the process of actually growing an economy. And I'll give you an example. Almost everyone I know who has insurance, they can go to the dentist twice a year for free, and there's all kind of checkups they can have for free, and they don't do them. Okay, so get this: even if you're against going to see doctors and all that kind of stuff, if you're for growing your economy, pick a local doctor, go to that doctor for every free thing you can get every year. Because what happens is the insurance company is probably somewhere outside of Georgia. They write that check to that local doctor. When you go to your local dentist, the insurance company from outside the state, they write that check to that local dentist. So that dentist office that's sitting right there on your corner, or that little family practitioner that's sitting right there on your corner, just by going there and spending no money or a $25 copay, you can generate tens of thousands of dollars for that business right there. And then if 300 people did it, you just generated $300,000 for that person right there. Now with those $300, that person can now go and pay the local barber. They can pay a landscaper. They can pay someone to cater a party. They can support the small businesses around them with new money that they've generated. Versus we've opened 5 barbershops. So instead of 2,000 people going to 5 barbers, those same 2,000 people are going to 10. Don't get me wrong, the jobs are great. The people who get the jobs to construct those buildings, that's great too. But let's figure out how to get outside money inside of our city. And that's how you grow your economy. And I would hope people would appreciate those two things. One, spend the money that you get within a 5 to 10 mile radius of where you live as much as possible. And second, if you are a business owner, try to figure out ways to get money generated to your business that don't necessarily rely on the local economy.
Awesome. JC, you're back. So I want you to finish that nugget that you were giving to us. We're wrapping up soon, but I want you to finish your thought.
Yeah, I was just saying, don't let the next 4 years come and you don't participate in anything in your neighborhood, right? There are many neighborhoods, city that have not only your HOA, but their neighborhood associations. get involved. Those are ways in which you can influence policies in your area. Get involved in your HOA. Get to know your local city council people. Get to know your local state representative. Know what is happening. Take them ideas for laws that you might be seeing. Whenever they send out a little survey, just fill it out. Let them know your thoughts so that they can know that you're here, you're watching, and you're engaged. So if all we do is that we just wait until every 4 years and something is going wrong, like we're going to change the system, not enough people vote in the non-presidential year of election. But guess what? If you don't do that, your state house or your House of Representative in DC might change. And so the president that you vote for may have a difficult time implementing the policies and the things that they promised that they were going to do. And then you say, well, what went wrong? He's a no good or she's a no good, right? But it's because you did not vote in that in-between election to continue to give them the support that they want. And that happens on all levels. So again, don't let 2020 be just the year you got involved because there was a president that you wanted to get out of office. Let it be a turning point. Let it be an example of what you think might be that thing that is affecting you so badly because you weren't watching the house all this time.
Right.
So we just got a Facebook user saying that the Empowered app, right? There's an app that was created that will allow you to connect in this Empowered, EMPOWRD, right? The Empowered app. It literally shows you who your elected officials are. They will show you agendas. They'll show all the things for you. It does the work for you. Just download the app. It's Black-owned business. It's an amazing app. And I can't say that it's around in every city, but it's around in many cities across the country. That's an amazing app, an amazing tool to allow people to engage differently and engage now. So to your point, Jacee, we've covered a lot of things here, but stay involved. Don't just react. Participate in the process, guys. We need you to show up. We need you to continue to vote. I'll tell you, if you're in the state of Georgia, there's a major election January 5th. You'll just be coming off of holidays and different things like that. You may not remember to vote, but it's super important that we get out and continue to vote. If there's something that you see going on in your community, every elected official has an email address or a phone number. Send those emails. Get your neighbors to send the emails, because if you're concerned in your community, guess what? 9 times out of 10, someone else will be concerned. They may not know about it, so you may have to do a little bit of work to knock on a couple of your neighbors' doors and say, did you know this was going on? Did you know this is how this is impacting? Because one of the things I tell people all the time, especially on the local government level, people don't go to a local government website unless something's going wrong. Unless they have to pay their water bill, they have, their garbage didn't get picked up, there's a power line down, something. They don't go to that site until something is impacting their life. They don't go to the school board site until they're trying to figure out how to get little Johnny or little Samantha out of trouble. All right. But we have to start using these tools more often. So I ask everyone that's watching this, everyone that's going to watch the video afterwards, if it's every Sunday evening, go to your school board website, your county commission website, and your city council website. Pull up the agenda for the meeting that's coming up. See if there's something that's kind of piques your fancy, and ask your neighbors and your friends to do the same thing. When you're involved, when you have understanding what's coming up, you don't have to react. There's a reason why most city council buildings only fit a few hundred people, or county commission buildings only fit a few hundred people. And less than 10% of the voting base, or the people who live there, can actually exercise their First Amendment right of addressing the government for a grievance, because they know you're not going to show up, and they continue to slide things past you. So if you heard nothing from this, Nothing changes if nothing changes. Voting is just the foot into the doorstep. Your activity, your activism, your interest, and your involvement is what's going to change your communities. Kevin, Jacee, I appreciate all the knowledge you shared to the community. The One Institution family, the Own the Vision family, we appreciate you guys. This has been Candid Conversation. I'm Jason Warner. I appreciate you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.